with House Bill 287. It is a bill to authorize the issuance of special license plates for supporters of stopping gun violence bearing the legend, Stop Gun Violence. The bill was reported to the Committee on Transportation. Mr. Speaker, there is a floor substitute offered by Delegate Simon, and then also there are floor amendments offered by Delegate Ferris to the substitute, and possibly as well, or there are here, floor amendments to the original introduced bill.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Carolina, Delegate Orrock.
I stand for a motion.
Delegate has the floor.
I would move that we would pass by the floor substitute.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Delegate may state it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would it be fair to say that floor substitute isn't even before us under your rule of yesterday, because you have to take up the amendments to the bill first?
There are no amendments. I think the way it's going to work is that the way that I articulated the rule is going to work is Delegate Simon has a floor substitute, which was, I think, submitted first. And so that floor substitute should be the one that's before us. And so if I understand Delegate Orrock's motion correctly, he has that, it's correct, it was on that floor substitute to be passed by. And so the motion is for the floor substitute offered by Delegate Simon to be passed by. 2 minutes, I'll just remind everyone you have 2 minutes on each side. Okay, all those in favor?
I'm sorry, my speak button's not working.
Sure. If you'll hit it.
That's probably okay.
Delegate Simon speaking to that motion.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, this is a license plate bill brought to me by a constituent. All right? If you guys want to pass by the amendment, that's great. Fantastic. It'll go back to what it was before, a $10 license plate bill from a woman who was moved by an incident she saw to go out and collect 500 signatures in the cold, in the rain, at the farmer's market, at every event she could get to. She collected these license plate applications so she could get her personalized license plate that she had to bear her message and her legend. I prefer that we don't have the floor substitute. I was doing that to be nice. I was trying to do a favor to a member on the other side who had some concern that we weren't using this to raise any money and had a suggestion that we ought to be raising money. My suggestion was, if you want to raise money off this plate, let's dedicate it to an existing fund for domestic violence. Okay? You all want to do that? That's fine. We'll go back to the $10 plate.
Okay,
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Speaking to the motion.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, simply because we are in such an interesting procedural posture, I feel it incumbent upon me to remind the members of my caucus to vote yes on this particular motion.
Okay. Shall the floor substitute by Delegate Simon, just to be clear, be passed by? All those in favor of that motion signify.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Charlottesville, Delegate Toscano.
Mr. Speaker, just for speaking to the motion.
Delegate has the floor.
Yes, very short and sweet. I would ask the members of my caucus to vote no against passing by. You want them to pass by? Okay. I request that the members of my caucus join the esteemed delegate from Rappahannock in voting Shenandoah to pass by the amendment.
Shall the floor substitute by Delegate Simon be passed by? All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it, and that is passed by.
Mr. Speaker, the floor amendments to the floor substitute proposed by Delegate Ferris are moot because of the action just taken. Mr. Speaker, however, there are floor amendments to the introduced version offered by Delegate Ferris. There are two of them. Let me read them if I might. Amendment number 1, at the beginning of line 13, insert the letter A. Amendment number 2, after line 15, insert B. The annual fee for plates issued pursuant to this section shall be $25 in addition to the prescribed fee for state license plates. For each such $25 fee collected in excess of 1,000 registrations pursuant to this section, $15 of that shall be paid into the state treasury and credited to a special non-reverting fund known as the Stop Gun Violence Fund established within the Department of Accounts. These funds shall be paid annually to the Behavioral Health and Developmental Services Fund and used to enhance and ensure for the coming years the quality of care and treatment provided to individuals receiving public mental health, developmental, and substance abuse services in Virginia. All other fees imposed under the provisions of this section shall be paid to and received by the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles and paid by him into the state treasury and set aside as a special fund to be used to meet the necessary expenses incurred by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Mr. Speaker, point of order. Mr. Speaker, is this amendment germane?
Delegate May state it.
Is this amendment germane to the original bill? It seems to me it expands the scope. It goes from a $10 plate to a revenue plate. It adds a new section, and I think it changes the purpose of the legislation. I therefore think it's not germane to the bill and not properly before us.
I think the amendment is clearly germane. Delegate from Campbell, Delegate Ferris, speaking to his floor amendment.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know how this, there was several copies sent around of how this was supposed to be, and it was my intention for it to be sent to the Behavioral Health and Development Services Trust Fund. And I think, okay.
Yeah.
I thought he said something about the Gun Violence Trust Fund. So behavioral, okay, good enough. I would ask the body to please accept my amendment.
Mr. Speaker.
Delegate from Shenandoah, Delegate Gilbert.
Mr. Speaker, could the clerk report the floor amendments again, please?
Amendment number 1, at the beginning of line 13, insert letter A. Line 15, it's amendment number 2. After line 15, insert the following. B, the annual fee for plates issued pursuant to this section shall be $25 in addition to the prescribed fee for state license plates. For each such $25 fee collected in excess of 1,000 registrations pursuant to this section, $15 shall be paid into the state treasury and credited to a special non-reverting fund known as the Stop Gun Violence established within the Department of Accounts. These funds shall be paid annually to the Behavioral Health and Developmental Services Fund and used to enhance and ensure for the coming years the quality of care and treatment provided to individuals receiving public mental health, developmental, and substance abuse services in Virginia. All other fees imposed under the provisions of this section shall be paid to and received by the Commissioner of the Department of Motor Vehicles and paid by him into the state treasury and set aside as a special fund to be used to meet the necessary expenses incurred by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to these amendments.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, it's not that I don't want to have these plates do some good and potentially do some help, but to make the connection between gun violence and mental health and to say that that's a correlation, to say that, and I hear it all the time, we don't have a gun problem, we have a mental health problem, is not accurate. It's not supported by facts. The fact is that an estimated 4% of violence against others, all kinds of violence against others, only 4% is caused by people exhibiting symptoms of serious mental illness. That means 96% of violence out there has nothing to do with mental illness. In fact, and I wasn't planning, this is a license plate bill. This is a constituent request. I was not planning to get up this session and have this debate about gun violence. I didn't hope that this would spur this discussion on, but you guys have put me in a corner here. You know, there is a correlation between domestic violence. I was happy to go there. The people suffering from mental illness are far more likely than others to become victims of gun violence. That's what the research shows. That's what everything tells us. To buy into the myth that this is a mental health problem and that these license plates ought to be used to solve a mental health problem unfairly stigmatizes people living with mental illness, It unfairly characterizes it, and I think, frankly, it's a constitutional issue in that this is an expression. People putting this plate ought to have something to say about what that plate means and where the funds that come from it go. I'd also point out that we have an NRA plate that people, anybody want to know where the money goes from the NRA plate? It's a $10 plate, just like the plate that I put in my bill for. We have Choose Life plates. We don't fight you guys about that. We have plates for In God We Trust. We have your, Don't Tread on Me plates. People use these plates for all kinds of purposes.
Delegate from Shenandoah,
Don't tell them how to
Delegate
spend the money on the plates.
Will the delegate yield for a question?
Delegate yield for
I'll
question.
yield.
Delegate yields.
I would first of all ask the delegate to better articulate the extent to which he believes people did not fight against the Choose Life plate, first of all, when it was before the body.
Mr. Speaker, I would concede that I wasn't here when that was done, so I don't know what the fight about that would have been looked like.
I would ask the gentleman if he would yield for a further question.
Will the delegate yield for another question?
I'll yield for another question.
Delegate yield.
With the delegate's admission that he does not know about that which he just referenced, I would further inquire if he is only concerned about not linking behavioral health, and by the way, we've seen any number of high-profile mental health issues being involved in high-profile mass shootings in this country. But if he chooses not to link those two in any way and wants a more broad approach to the problem of violence, why doesn't he simply put forth a license plate that purports to ask people to stop violence generally rather than singling out gun violence if he indeed wants to more broadly attack the issue of violence in our society?
Mr. Speaker, I would ask the delegate, suggest to the delegate that if he would like to do that, he can get his own bill and his own license plate. And I would go on to say that there is a serious issue of gun violence in this country. We see it every day. We have school shootings, we have mass shootings, we have toddlers grabbing the gun out of their parents' purse and shooting them. We have kids killing kids. There's a much broader problem of gun violence, which my constituent wants to draw attention to and raise the profile of. In fact, when she was at the Transportation Committee, she brought with her these child safety locks that she takes with her everywhere she goes, collecting signatures for her license plates, because she's that concerned that people learn how to safely handle their firearms, that firearms owners handle them responsibly and safely. Those are the sorts of issues that she wants to get with this. And it's not fair to link this to mental health. It's not fair to stigmatize people living with mental illness. And it's not fair to the patron it's not fair to the woman who asked me to do this to hijack her bill and turn it into something that it's not intended for her to be.
Speaking to the amendments.
Delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I know the original expressed reason for this bill was that it was just a little old license plate bill, but I think the delegate understands it's much more than that. It is him trying to build a narrative that gun violence is somehow different from regular violence. Whenever we see a mass shooting, the call is always to focus on the instrument and not the person. When we see people run over by box trucks, we never hear focus on the instrument. We hear people trying to focus on what was the reason for that. And so it is this singular focus on the instrument and not the violence itself that is troubling to some of us. And so we have seen, again, enough high-profile mass shootings in this country that involve mental health issues that some of us believe very strongly that in order to tackle those issues, we need to have a better focus on mental health. And that is the reason for the delegate from Campbell's amendment.
Delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon. All those in favor of the floor amendments proposed by Delegate Ferris, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Those floor amendments are adopted. Ayes and nays are called for. All those in favor of the floor amendments shall the floor amendments proposed by Delegate Ferris be adopted? Clerk will Close the roll.
Ayes 50, noes 48.
Ayes 50, noes 48. Those floor amendments are adopted. Shall the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill is engrossed and passed to its third reading.